really in any interview, if you are very qualified for the interview, you are going to talk about the subjects in that interview like they are sports. And that's what I listen for when I'm interviewing people for cybersecurity positions. Are they talking about cybersecurity like it's sports? Oh, we did this. I went there and saw these people, and you talk about information security professionals like they're rock stars. I saw this. I saw Bruce Schneier at this conference, and then we went and we solved these problems. I did this great training. I took this capture the flag competition, and it's just you want to hear really enthusiastic, knowing participation in cybersecurity. Now, if you don't have that, if you're like, well, I really need this job, but I'm not quite sure what I'm talking about, you have to fall back on being honest. What's going to carry you is your enthusiasm, is your willingness to learn, the fact that you have learned as much as you have just by reading, by watching webinars, by listening to podcasts. It's really, I have to say, the energy and enthusiasm that someone brings to a position, especially a more junior position, that people are going to look for. I mean, if they're hiring for a very senior position and you really need to know your stuff, you're not going to get that job anyway. But if you have a shot to get in there, maybe you have the same certification as 2 or 3 other candidates who are interviewing for the same job. What's going to differentiate you between those other people? And it's got to be your presentation, your personability, your enthusiasm, and your desire to not only work the job, but to work at that company. Those are the sort of things that have to come through. You really have to sell yourself. As far as things not to do in an interview, so I'm just thinking back over the interviews so low energy. You don't want to be quiet. You are being interviewed. However, you are also interviewing the interviewers. You are engaging with them as if you're all sitting around a table. You might be on a phone conversation, but imagine you're sitting around a table. They're asking you questions. You're asking them questions. It's not really an interview. It's a dialogue. So make sure that you actually engage in a dialogue. You just don't sit there acting like you're being interrogated. That's back to low energy. That's back to bad presentation. Another thing is you must be perfectly honest in your interview. If they ask you a question and you honestly don't know the answer to the question, say, I do not know that. If you've heard a little bit of something about it or something, it's okay to say that. But if you don't know an answer, don't make something up. Or if you're on a phone interview, don't stall for time. Google the answer and then suddenly sound like you're the Wikipedia on whatever that subject is. That's actually a very common thing to happen in telephone interviews when no webcams are used, where somebody will say, well, I remember hearing about that. I'm thinking, I think it's kind of coming to me. And then all of a sudden, boom, they sound like they're reading the first few paragraphs for that topic in the Wikipedia. And it's so obvious that they're Googling answers. And that's not the purpose. We're not interviewing you to see if you can Google answers. We're seeing what you already know. And so there's a dishonesty factor there that's very, very distasteful, is what I can say. It's like, no, this isn't the kind of character, of a people we want working on our team. So probably the third thing is don't try to steer the conversation away from what the interviewers are talking about. Some people employ a type of distraction method where they'll actually literally try, and it's almost like a form of social engineering, where they try to steer the interviewers away from what they're talking about for some reason. Maybe you don't know the subject, or it's not something you want to talk about. If somebody asks you about your a previous job and you really just don't want to talk about it, just say, I really just can't talk about my previous employment situation very much. I can say generic things, but I really can't give any details. If I were to go for a job interview, I would not be allowed to say anything about where I work. I couldn't tell you what kind of servers we used, what kind of network management system we used. Forget it. I'm just not going to say it. And so I would just say, I just can't reveal that information. And they will respect you for that, because nobody wants somebody giving away their company secrets.